Hi, I'm Jessica,
And I'm Tracy,
and this is She's on Top, the place where we celebrate and elevate women.
and this is our show called The New Normal.
And today we are super excited to have a friend of ours, Jessica O Reilly, who is a sexologist and relationship expert. Hey, Jess.
Hey, how you two doing?
Great.
Great, not too bad. We're really excited to be talking to you. Lots of questions.
Yeah. We've had, it's funny, I think we're 6 weeks in now, and so many people, all of a sudden the relationship thing has been like bubbling to the surface in a lot of areas. And so we have our own personal struggles. And so we thought we would start there. Maybe you should start, Trace.
Yeah, well, actually, even before we start, can you just, for people that don't know you, can you just tell everyone what you do so, get an idea of that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a sexologist and relationship expert, and I primarily speak for a living. So I work with groups, mostly entrepreneurs and executives and their partners who really want to invest in their relationships. So this is a big shift for me to be at home in Toronto, because I'm on the road every couple of days.
And actually, we did a video on Dr. Jess, which we'll put a link to, and you can see all about Dr. Jess's life and what she does. It's really fascinating.
Thank you.
So to start, Jess and I were talking about what we'd like to talk to you about. And one of the things is relationships. Everyone's, at home, we're struggling. So my example is that I have a boyfriend, a partner, but we don't live together. I live with my kids, he lives with his son. And we've been struggling as well whether or not we should get together. So the first beginning of COVID, we got together on the weekends, and then we decided that it wasn't right. So he came over one time and he wore a mask and sat on the other couch, and we didn't like touch or connect. And it was actually, I found it very depressing. I was really upset by the whole thing. So now we're struggling as how do we keep the intimacy going? How do we keep the relationship going when we can't really be together? And when we do get together, it's hard to know what to do.
Yeah, so, the public health line, of course, is that you can't socialize with anyone who isn't immediately living in your household, which is very couple-centric, right? So for folks who live apart or for folks who live alone, the challenge is exacerbated by these new circumstances. But for those who are just meeting up online, if you are meeting him, via Zoom or on a Facebook chat or whatever, wherever you decide to meet, what I'm suggesting to people is that you do things in groups as opposed to only one-on-one, because the one-on-one stuff is very high intensity and it's emotionally exhausting. I don't think people realize how tiring online meetings are, whether it's for work, pleasure, or with a partner from whom you're living apart, because you have to work harder to kind of pay attention to people's facial expressions. You have to tune in a little closer to get their tone. A lot of the nuance is missed. The awkward pauses are really just amplified online. So in real life, a pause, a little bit of silence is a nice thing, but online it feels really nervous. So then I know people like me who like to fill the air. We just blurt something out. And I was on a family call last night and I said something that was intended to be nice, but I realized in retrospect it might not have been taken that way. And so we're just over analyzing in a way that's totally different than in person. So preamble to, can you do something together online, like go to an online trivia night so that you interact a little bit and then you have something to chat about after? Or can you sign up for an online course together? So Harvard, for example, has a wealth of free online courses now, and you can study everything from Hinduism to computer programming to cognitive functioning, training your brain, history, art history, so many different topics. So could you take a course together? And even though you're not going to be engaging necessarily at the same time, you have something to talk about. So I think this is the time to invest in other realms of the relationship, not get too hung up on the erotic or the sensual. And of course, if you do want to go there, we can go there.
And you have videos to help you with that.
I do. Yeah, actually, I just wrote a book. This is my 5th book, and it's The Ultimate Guide to Seduction and Foreplay. And we have a whole chapter, just luckily, because we wrote it a year ago, but it just came out last week. It has a whole chapter on digital sex and how you don't have to go all the way. You don't have to have, I think a lot of us think.
I will be getting that book.
It's the Ultimate Guide to Seduction and Foreplay that I
fantastic.
I will put the link below. Yeah.
Awesome. And really, there are so many different ways to be playful online without having to say, show your face or do something that feels really self-conscious. So I would feel really self-conscious having full on, sex online, face to face on the video, but there are other things you can do, like in the dark or off camera or via voice notes. And I'm such an auditory person, and we talk about how your learning style affects your sexual and seduction style in the book. And so, for instance, people who are more auditory are really not just turned on by the sound of their partner's voice, but it puts us at ease. It's very soothing. It can, reduce your heart rate, help to lower your blood pressure. So there are all these layers into which we can invest in order to have a hot sex life, but also really just to maintain the relationship.
This is so fantastic. I love what you said. And I actually love what you said about the online courses, because sometimes when we communicate, there is a pause and then we're like, oh, okay, we have nothing to say, let's just go now. Whereas if we were sitting on the couch across from each other, we would have a pause, it would be fine. And it's exacerbated by the screen. I never realized that. So it's brilliant. Thank you. And I'm getting the book for sure.
And I wanted to say, it was funny because I was listening, even though I was listening, and I thought the other thing, which is sort of what you're saying, is like, if you're on like a video, or like usually when you're having sex, or even if you're sitting across from somebody having a date, you don't have to look at yourself.
Oh yeah, that's a worst.
It's like, it's like, oh God. I mean, so you're having a conversation with somebody going, look at my eyebrows. Or
Right.
it's like, is that really the way my face looks? And you're out of the conversation.
That's a really great point. It is difficult to be present online. Yeah, I know I'm online all day, and I make a big point of, if I can drag myself off the screen, I won't even be on there, because I'm going to be distracted by like that one hair that's
Yeah.
and my eyebrows that, they say that they're sisters, not twins. Well, mine are
Yes.
like distant kissing cousins. I'm always trying to get them to match. So. Yes, you're right. That's a really important observation, that's an extra layer of distraction. So I think number one, regardless of whether we're talking about business or relationships or anything at this time, can we go easy on ourselves, right? Can we not make this a time where we have to perform and do everything and revolutionize ourselves? This is, for many of us, it's not a time to thrive. It's really just a time to survive, and give yourself permission to just do what it takes to survive.
Okay, so I have a separate question, because I am single and I haven't done online dating forever and ever. I was kind of like, but I'm thinking, every once in a while they go, this could go on for a year and a half. And I'm like, oh, that's a whole nother struggle I have. So I wanted to ask a question about, is this a good time to online date, and how to online date? And it was funny because it was interesting. I was actually watching a video the other day with Sharon Stone and Naomi Campbell, and Sharon Stone was saying that she's on an app right now. She did the Hollywood one. She's on a public one. I think it's Bumble, because it's all female. So my question is, when I was doing the online dating, I was really big on, you have 2 or 3 conversations and then you meet, because you have to see if you have that chemistry, and you can build up a lot of false intimacy. So my concern is this a good time to be doing it? Because you can't meet in person. You could build up this whole thing that isn't real. So how do you balance that?
Well, I do think online relationships are real. So I have a slightly different perspective. And I don't know if it's because I bounce around so much, but I maintain so many of my relationships digitally. And I think a lot of like younger folks do as well. Like, you're younger than me. And so I think that you can have something real online. I know that people talk about chemistry, for example, but I'm less inclined to the notion of, a mystical or natural matching chemistry, and more inclined toward chemistry as being something you build, right? Yes, okay, you're going to feel that spark at first with some people more than others, but you're going to lose that spark and go back to a baseline regardless of who that person is and so-called chemistry after 6 to 18 months anyway. So to answer your first question, is it a good time to date online? I think overall it might be a good time, because I think people are moving a little bit more slowly with their conversations and engaging in a slightly more meaningful way. I think we're forcing ourselves to be emotionally expressive. Like, nobody's just saying, hey, how are you? Want to hook up? We're really, I mean, on every phone call, whether it's business or pleasure, everyone's kind of checking in with one another. And so I think that's a good opportunity to set the foundation for checking in on one another's true feelings. And you know what I really like about this time? And I'm still working on it myself, but it's the first time where when someone says, how are you? We're kind of thinking about it. Because anytime someone says, how are you? I would say great, right? And life is pretty good, so I can't complain too much. But I'm not great right now. I'm not myself. I'm I'm a little pissy. Listen, I'm grateful to be like home and safe and sound in Toronto with a roof over my head and all the food I need. Like I really do feel thankful for that. And at the same time, I can't do my regular work, right? Like I was supposed to be in working in Spain, Italy, Romania, Portugal, and France this month.
Wow.
And so all of those, and again, not a big deal. Like there are much bigger problems in the world. But if you look at, happiness and fulfillment being expectations being met or exceeded, obviously my expectations were way higher than what has happened. Again, I know this is temporary. I know that it's not as though my career is over, but it's a big shift. And so for the first time, I'm able to say to people like, I'm doing okay. Right? I'm doing all right. I'm feeling conflicted. And so that's why I think online dating is more interesting at this time, because I think we can be a little bit more honest about what we're going through rather than only trying to put our best foot forward. Now, you asked the question about meeting up. So obviously you can't meet up, but you can, I suggest again, for your first date, you don't have to do this face-to-face, eye-to-eye, high intensity date. It could be that you, as I said, you join a group chat together. Like maybe, as I said, a lot of people are doing these trivia nights. The bars are doing trivia nights.
Which I didn't even know about. That sounds great. Yeah.
There's so many cool things out there. So maybe you join one of those together. So you kind of get to see whether they interact, whether they speak up, whether they laugh, whether they sit
smart.
stoic. And then you can chat a little bit after. And then you have something shared to chat about. So yes, it's a huge shift. I don't want to say it's a good or a bad time, because I think it really depends on your circumstances. Like, do you really want to date right now, or do you feel pressure to date right now? Are you worried that, dating will never be the same again? And I think we can rest assured that even if this lasts a little while, we will go back to a new version of normal where you will be able to meet. So, it's not that the time is now or never. So if you're in the mood, date. And if you're not, I say put it on hold, no pressure.
I actually love this is the way my brain works. I actually love the trivia thing with a bunch of people, because I'm like, you could be on there with your guy and be like, oh, but what about that guy? It gives you some options. It's like going to, you never know. At least it's sort of, again, it takes the pressure off,
It does. And
I love that. Sorry.
I was going to say, I love what you said about the vulnerability, because, when you meet somebody, when you're not online, this is going on, you meet for your first time and you put on that facade of who you are and he puts on that facade, but now you actually have to be more real. So you might actually get to meet that real person quicker than you would with regular dating. So anyway,
absolutely.
I was going to make one point. I really appreciate you talking about your struggles. And I think one thing that I realized is that I think it's hard for people, like everybody's doing has to qualify their struggle, right? Because you feel bad because, this person's sick, but our personal struggles are still our struggles, our feelings are our feelings. And I think that for all of us, if we can just kind of hold that space for each other, because I think it's hard because people feel like they can't talk about their fact they're struggling because somebody else is struggling more. We all know that. It doesn't mean we're not struggling.
That's a great point. And the feeling of feeling conflicted, I think, is what so many of us in the first world are feeling. We're, again, frustrated. Listen, I know I don't have it bad. But that doesn't mean I'm not frustrated. And also in relationships, that doesn't mean that I'm not taking out the frustration in ways that don't necessarily make rational sense. So I might get really frustrated because Brandon, my husband, left a mug in the sink. And I have to remind myself, I'm not actually frustrated about that mug. I'm frustrated because today, I'm supposed to be in Denver or wherever I'm supposed to, And so, and again, to me, let me be clear, it's not about travel. That's my job. My husband asked me if you could go anywhere, and travel, where would you go if, when the flights open up and everything's safe again? I'm like, I don't care where I go. I just want to work. Like, I like my job. I derive a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment from my job. And I never really needed that reminder. Like, I always know how good life is. But I think that for example, my husband, who travels a lot with me when he feels like it or when he can, he said, I didn't realize how much I really loved our lifestyle and how lucky we were. So I think that's a good wake-up call for many of us. And you're right. It's in the context of our lives. I also think this is the time to be giving when we can, right? Like if you can help someone with their rent, there are a lot of people struggling right now. So even if you can throw $10 or $50, or some of us can throw a little bit more to support people. I think this is a time for redistribution of wealth. I'm all about, profit, and people can go and make profits, but I think we have to also really be thinking about people, and that this is our time, right? I know in my field, most people struggle to make ends meet, unless you're a traditional therapist. most folks who are sex educators or relationship educators, they can't do any of their workshops anymore. And they already were struggling. And there are thousands of people in my field. So I think it's really a time to start thinking about how we can support other people as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And I just want to say quickly, just for people who don't know you, one of the things I love about your advice and that people should know is like, you've been with Brandon a long time, right? And you live together and work together. So, you know, it comes from a very authentic place. Like, how long have you guys been married?
So we just had our wedding anniversary last week. It was 14 years married.
Wow.
We've been living together for 19 years. So we were kids. We were
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And he's so easygoing. It's funny because, you know, we find ourselves getting a little frustrated, but we have the capacity to say, oh, I'm not actually frustrated at you. Let me remember what I'm actually frustrated about, which is this entire situation. And yeah, it's been going it's kind of nice. Listen, I'd rather be back doing my thing and having my normal life. But if I'm going to be cooped up with someone, I'm not going to complain about being cooped up with Brandon.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for talking to us. We know you have a book. We'll put the link below. You also have a podcast. So if people want to write in and ask you relationship questions, they do it through your podcast. Is that correct?
That's right. It's the Sex with Dr. Jess podcast, and it's on the website, sexwithdrjess.com. And if you have questions, we talk about everything from emotional literacy to, this week we were talking about overcoming conflict. And then Brandon and I, in the next episode, we'll be talking about how to kind of reminisce about your past. We have this "Why Do I Love You Again" exercise that comes from one of my video courses, and we try it live on the podcast. And it's so funny because oftentimes when it's time to record the podcast, we're both really busy and feeling frustrated, but it's so cool that 30 minutes later, we feel so much more connected. And I'm like, oh, I forgot how good this feels. It's almost therapeutic for us.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. It was so great talking with you, and hopefully we can actually meet for a coffee soon. That would be lovely.
And we will it's so great. We'll put links to everything because like you mentioned, the videos as well. I know you have a website with all these downloadable videos, so we'll add that as well. And this is great. Like I love your advice because it was not what I was expecting, and it's really made me think, and I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So. Yeah. So thank you so much. We'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye, Jess.